Okay, so for my article, I actually chose a couple of articles, but they're all about the same topic. They just cover kind of slightly different aspects of it. And so, what it's about, or what they're about, is about this water slide called the Verruckt, which was this water slide in Kansas, and it got the world record for being the tallest water slide in the world, and it was almost 17 stories high, and the rafts that go down it would reach speeds of almost 70 miles per hour, and yet the whole ride was over in about 10 seconds. And so it got a ton of attention because it was just so tall and so fast and also so steep. But yet people said it was still so safe, and people were just kind of amazed with how the engineers were able to make it so steep and so fast, and yet have it be so safe. And so the physics behind it were kind of looked at a ton, and there was a lot of hype over it for how they were able to design it and use the physics behind it. But unfortunately, a couple years after it opened, someone died on it, and it was shut down, obviously. And there were also multiple injuries on it in the other during like when it was open, which was very bad. And so the main problem with it on how people were injured and how the fatality happened was mainly that the acceleration was just so fast because the initial drop was almost 17 stories and it was pretty much almost straight down. So that's a lot of speed that builds up. And the only forces that really could slow it down were the gravitational force and then the friction force. And for the friction force, since it's a water slide, there wasn't much friction because the raft wasn't actually on the track; it was on the water, like floating on the water. So it was almost a frictionless surface. And then for the gravity, there it was just kind of too much for gravity alone to slow down because after the first huge drop, it would go on this kind of little hump that was supposed to slow it down because it had to go on this ramp up that would slow it down. But still, even with those things that were supposed to slow it down, it did not always work, and sometimes it just went too fast. And so what happened with the fatality was that the the raft that the people were on, with all their weights added up, it was on the heavier end of the scale. And even though it was still considered within the safe range for how much it could weigh, it was still on the heavier end. And so obviously, the heavier the raft is, the more momentum it's going to have, and just the more speed it's going to pick up as it goes down. And so it was going down super fast. But then the other part that plays into it was the weight distribution. And so the way that they had the people sitting on the raft was with the lightest person in front and then the heaviest person in the back. And so with the lightest person in front, the raft would start to kind of, as it reached the end of the, or as it, yeah, as it got closer to the ground, the front started to kind of tip up, and the bottom would still be pushing forward. And so what happened with it was that as the raft was going down and then up on the ramp, it went airborne, and that's how the person died. So obviously that's very bad, and that's just kind of an example of how important physics are and how important it is to get the relationship between acceleration and then the gravity and friction forces that slow it down, like how important it is to get them all balanced well enough so that it actually will slow down in time and that the forces will be enough to stop the momentum and the velocity. Um, yeah, so that's kind of the main takeaway from the story. And with the whole situation, there were lots of other things that should have been warning signs that were kind of ignored. And there were lots of other things that led to the whole situation and the multiple injuries. Like the seatbelts didn't really work, the rafts were kind of falling apart, and the inventor of it was so obsessed with getting the world record that he ignored the testing that wasn't thorough enough. And yeah, he didn't really take the time to do thorough testing. And the testing that they did do, the trials, like the trial runs that they did, the rafts would still go airborne. So it was not really safe from the start, but they kind of ignored it and just went ahead with it. So that's kind of a lesson. No matter what the science is, really, it just matters to have accurate testing and to have thorough testing. Because obviously in this situation, not getting the physics right and not getting the engineering right, and then ignoring the testing and ignoring the warning signs, yeah, that just kind of led to a very bad situation. And so this is just kind of a warning, I guess, for future engineering situations and future applications of physics in the real world.